They tried to bury you in a place where no one would hear your side, but they forgot that Allah does not need a crowd to witness what happened. They thought silence meant defeat. They thought your restraint meant fear. They thought the days passing without your name being cleared meant the lie had settled into the ground. But something has been moving beneath the surface. Not loud, not dramatic, not announced to anyone, yet steady enough to shake what they built. The same mouths that shaped the accusation are beginning to contradict themselves. The same people who acted certain are now avoiding details. The same rooms where your name was lowered are becoming uncomfortable, because truth has a weight that lies cannot carry for long. You may have spent nights replaying the injustice, wondering why Allah allowed people to misunderstand you so deeply, why the ones you helped could stand quietly while your character was questioned, why your patience looked like weakness to people who only respect noise. But what if the delay was not abandonment? What if Allah was protecting you from defending yourself in a way that would have stained your heart? What if He kept you still because the exposure was never supposed to come from your anger, but from their own hands? There is a kind of justice that arrives quietly at first. It does not always come with applause. It may begin with one person noticing a small inconsistency, one hidden message coming to light, one pattern becoming too obvious to ignore. And by the time people finally understand, you are no longer the same person they tried to destroy. You are calmer. You are sharper. You are less available to chaos. You have learned that being buried by people is not the same as being forgotten by Allah. The hardest part was not only the accusation, it was watching how quickly some people believed it because it made their own discomfort with you easier to explain. A lie can travel far when it gives jealous hearts permission to stop pretending. You saw faces change without a conversation. You felt doors close without being told why. You entered spaces where the air shifted, where greetings became shorter, where people who once asked for your help suddenly acted as if being near you might cost them something. That kind of isolation can press on the chest in a way few people understand. It makes you question your memory, your intentions, even your worth. And in those hours, the test was not whether you could prove them wrong immediately. The test was whether you could remain truthful when being truthful brought no instant reward. Sabr is not passive. It is not sitting helplessly while people damage your name. Sabr is the discipline of refusing to become what wounded you. It is the decision to speak only where speech is useful, to hold back when anger wants to perform, to pray even when the prayer is soaked in exhaustion. You wanted to explain everything, and some nights you almost did. You drafted messages in your mind. You imagined confronting them with every detail, every receipt, every moment they twisted. But something inside kept pulling you back, not because you were powerless, but because your soul knew that certain battles become dirtier the moment you fight them at the level of your accusers. Allah sees the private restraint that no one claps for. He sees when you delete the paragraph. He sees when you swallow the response that would have been true but not wise. He sees when you keep making dua for clarity instead of revenge. The world may call that losing control of the story, but in the unseen, that may have been the moment your story was placed under divine protection. There is a strange pain in being misrepresented by people who know better. A stranger can misunderstand you, and it may sting for a moment, but when someone who sat with you, benefited from you, and knew the softness of your heart chooses to distort you, the wound reaches a deeper place. It is not only betrayal, it is a forced education. You learn that closeness does not always mean loyalty, and history with someone does not guarantee honesty from them. Some people collect your vulnerable moments not to protect them, but to use them later. When they need a weapon, they remember your mistakes more clearly than your kindness, because your downfall would make their own behavior easier to excuse. This is where many souls become bitter. They start treating every person like a future enemy. They confuse wisdom with suspicion and call it maturity. But the believer is asked to walk a narrower path. You are allowed to learn. You are allowed to create distance. You are allowed to stop handing your heart to people who have shown they cannot carry it with Amarna. Yet, you are not asked to poison your own spirit just because others revealed theirs. If this truth touches a place you have been carrying quietly, you may like this video as a small act of recognition, not for noise, but because some wounds deserve to be witnessed without being exploited. The lie against you may have exposed them, but it also exposed something inside you. The parts of you that wanted people's approval more than Allah's witness, the parts that needed everyone to understand you in order to feel safe, the parts that still believed reputation was fully in human hands. That is not a shameful discovery. It is a mercy, because once Allah shows you where you were attached, He can teach you how to stand without those attachments controlling you. Some people think divine justice means the guilty are humiliated instantly and the innocent are praised in front of everyone. Sometimes that happens, but often the process is far more precise and far less theatrical. Allah may not expose a person all at once because sudden exposure can look like a single mistake. Instead, He allows a pattern to reveal itself over time. One lie requires another lie to protect it. One manipulated story requires a new version when the first one is questioned. One hidden jealousy begins to leak through tone, timing, and reaction. People who once looked convincing start becoming careless because they believe they already won. This is why you were told, in ways your heart could barely accept, to wait. Not because waiting is easy, not because injustice is small, not because your tears did not matter, but because time is one of Allah's most subtle witnesses. Time shows who has a stable character and who only has a convincing performance. Time shows who can remain consistent when attention fades. Time shows who apologizes privately but continues the damage publicly. Time shows who was genuinely confused and who was intentionally cruel. There is a counterexample many forget. Not everyone who believed the wrong story was your enemy. Some people were misled. Some were afraid. Some lacked the courage to question the louder voice in the room. If your heart becomes too hungry for revenge, you will treat the deceived the same as the deceiver. And that is not justice. The spiritually disciplined person learns to separate categories. There are people to forgive closely, people to forgive from a distance, people to correct, people to leave to Allah, and people whose access must end completely. Mercy does not mean naivety. Tawakkul does not mean allowing yourself to be harmed again in the same way. The Prophet, peace be upon him, taught dignity alongside patience. A believer can be gentle and still close a door with firmness. Imagine the scene they never expected. You are sitting alone after Fajr, the room still dim, the world not yet loud enough to demand a mask from you. Your phone is face down because you are tired of checking whether people have finally understood. There is a heaviness behind your eyes from nights you did not describe to anyone. You make dua, not beautifully, not with perfect words, but with the honesty of someone who has run out of performances. You say, Allah, you know. That is all. And for the first time, the sentence does not feel like a last resort. It feels like a place to put the burden down. Later that day, nothing dramatic happens. No public apology appears. No announcement clears your name. But something inside you has shifted. You answer less quickly. You stop rereading old messages as if the past will confess if you stare at it long enough. You make your bed. You drink water. You pray on time. You do not send the emotional message. You do not check their page. You do not ask mutual people what is being said. This is not weakness. This is spiritual discipline becoming practical. The soul heals not only through grand realizations, but through small refusals to keep bleeding in public. Then, days or weeks later, a detail surfaces. Someone mentions that they heard two different versions of the story. Someone who was silent begins asking questions. Someone who doubted you remembers something you said months ago and realizes it matches the truth. The exposure begins almost embarrassingly small, like a loose thread on a garment. But when it is pulled, the whole design starts to come apart. This is often how Allah clears the path, not by giving you the satisfaction of instant vindication, but by allowing reality to become impossible to deny. The danger in being wronged is that the ego can disguise itself as justice. You can begin with a clean desire for truth and slowly start craving their humiliation. You can say you want your name cleared, but secretly hope they feel the loneliness they caused you. This is where the test becomes more hidden. The first test was surviving their lie. The second test is surviving your own reaction to their exposure. When the truth begins to rise, do not let your heart become drunk on it. Do not rehearse speeches of superiority. Do not turn their downfall into entertainment. Allah may be clearing you, but He is also watching what you do when the balance shifts. The chosen soul is not chosen to feel above people. It is chosen to be refined through what would have corrupted others. There is a difference between accepting justice and feeding on disgrace. If they are exposed, let the exposure serve truth, not your ego. If people return to you with apologies, listen with wisdom, not desperation. Some apologies are sincere, some are self-protection, some are attempts to regain access now that the public story has changed. You do not have to punish everyone, but you also do not have to reopen every door. Your heart can be clean without being unguarded. The Quran teaches us that Allah loves those who are just, and justice includes not exaggerating the harm beyond what happened, even when you have been deeply hurt. This nuance matters because pain can make a person feel entitled to become careless. But you are not being shaped for carelessness. You are being shaped for clarity. The people who tried to bury you may have revealed their character, but your response will reveal yours. And sometimes the most powerful response is not a dramatic confrontation. It is continuing with dignity, correcting what must be corrected, protecting your boundaries, and refusing to let their darkness become the language of your soul. There is a loneliness that comes before being restored, and it is not accidental. Allah may separate you from the noise so you can finally hear the parts of yourself you kept ignoring. When everyone is talking about you, it becomes tempting to build your entire life around correcting them. But in the quiet, a different question appears. Who are you when no one is praising you, defending you, or misunderstanding you? That question can feel severe, but it is a mercy. You begin to see that some of your old circles were held together by performance, not sincerity. You were useful, available, agreeable, and forgiving beyond reason, so people called you good. But when you needed fairness, some disappeared because they never loved your soul. They loved your accessibility. They loved how easy it was to benefit from you. They loved the version of you that did not require accountability from them. This realization is painful, yet it is clean pain. It does not destroy you. It disinfects the wound. The loneliness becomes a place of sorting. You stop confusing crowds with support. You stop mistaking constant communication for loyalty. You stop apologizing for boundaries that should have existed years ago. Later in this script, leave one comment answering this one question. What did Allah protect you from by making you stand alone for a season? Not what did you lose, but what were you protected from? That question can change the way you read your own past. Sometimes the people who left during the accusation were not removed as punishment to you, but as protection for the next version of you. Had they stayed, they might have continued shaping your decisions with guilt, fear, and emotional debt. Their absence hurt, but it also created space. And in that space, discipline entered. Prayer became less of a routine and more of a shelter. Silence became less of a prison and more of a shield. You stopped seeking witnesses everywhere because you became more aware of the witness who never looked away. When their true faces begin to show, it may not look like a movie scene. It may look like them losing the trust of people slowly. It may look like their own words being used to question them. It may look like those who once defended them becoming uneasy. It may look like opportunities closing, not because you cursed them, but because character has consequences. And it may also look like nothing happening publicly while Allah handles matters in ways you are not allowed to see. This is important. Do not measure divine justice only by visible embarrassment. Some people are corrected privately. Some are given time to repent. Some are exposed in the exact circle where they caused harm, not necessarily in front of the whole world. Some face the weight of their actions internally, in anxiety, restlessness, or loss of peace that no one else recognizes. You are not required to track every consequence. In fact, constantly watching for their punishment can keep you chained to the very grave they tried to dig for you. Your freedom begins when you stop needing a row seat to every outcome. That does not mean pretending nothing happened. It means entrusting the unseen parts of justice to the one who sees more accurately than you. There is a mature kind of victory where you no longer need everyone to come back and admit they were wrong. You know, Allah knows. The necessary people will know when it matters. The rest are not worth spending your life convincing. This is where tawakkul becomes more than a word. It becomes the way you stop refreshing the story, stop feeding the wound, stop shaping your future around people whose honesty collapsed under pressure. You still take lawful, wise steps when needed. You document what must be documented. You speak to the right people if harm continues. You protect your livelihood, your family, your dignity. Faith is not passivity, but after doing what is right, you release the obsession with controlling every interpretation. The truth does not become weaker because some refuse to face it. There is something almost terrifying about the strength that forms in a person who has been falsely accused and did not let the accusation define them. Before, you may have thought strength meant being able to answer everyone quickly. Now, you understand that strength can be slow, it can be measured, it can walk away from bait, it can sleep without needing to win every conversation. The people who tried to bury you expected panic. They expected you to become messy enough to make their lies believable. They expected your pain to speak in a way they could screenshot, repeat, and use as proof. But Allah gave you moments of restraint that interrupted their plan. Not every moment, perhaps. You may have cried, you may have broken down, you may have said things in private that came from hurt. You are human. But you did not become the monster they described. That matters. Your continued integrity became evidence. Your consistency became a witness. Your refusal to destroy others just because you were hurting became a quiet form of light. And now, as the truth rises, you are being invited into a harder kind of freedom. Not just freedom from their lie, but freedom from the old version of yourself that needed their acceptance. This is why the hardship felt so deep. It was not only about reputation, it was about identity. Allah was teaching you to locate your worth somewhere no rumor could reach. When a person reaches that place, they become difficult to manipulate. Praise does not intoxicate them as easily. Rejection does not collapse them as quickly. Betrayal still hurts, but it no longer becomes the center of their life. They move with more caution, but also more sincerity. They love with eyes open. They forgive without handing over the keys. They work without announcing every wound. They pray with a realism that only tested people understand. This is not a glamorous transformation. It is often quiet, inconvenient, and lonely, but it is real. And what is real does not need to shout to remain standing. So, when the truth finally exposes what they tried to hide, receive it with a steady heart. Do not rush to become loud just because you were once silenced. Do not let people pull you back into the same small room where the lie was born. You are not obligated to rebuild your life inside the imagination of those who misunderstood you. Let the facts speak where they must. Let your conduct speak where words would cheapen the moment. Let Allah handle what your hands were never designed to carry. There will be people who only respect you after others confirm your innocence. Learn from that. There will be people who always knew something was wrong but waited until it was safe to say so. Learn from that too. There will be one or two who stood beside you before the truth became popular. Remember them with honor, and there will be parts of you that still ache even after being cleared, because vindication does not erase the cost of the test. Be patient with that ache. Healing is not a denial of justice. It is the soul returning to balance after carrying too much. The grave they dug for your name became the place where your dependence on people was buried. The silence they mistook for weakness became the cover under which Allah strengthened you. The delay they celebrated became the evidence that truth was being prepared with precision. You were not preserved so you could become arrogant. You were preserved so you could walk forward without the old fear. Some people will only understand your innocence when they can no longer benefit from your guilt. By then, you may already be gone from the version of you they thought they had destroyed.